Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we are diving headfirst into a massive historical mystery. We're going to connect three of the most infamous global catastrophes of the 20th century to a quiet, hidden battle that's actually happening right now inside the bodies of millions of modern workers. Seriously, this is a story about the ultimate collision between human ambition and human biology. And the stakes, they literally could not be higher. Let's get right into it.
Here's our investigation blueprint for today. We'll kick things off with the midnight disasters, then we'll look at our ancient biological clock, explore the shattering of sleep, uncover the hidden health toll, and wrap up with a war against time.
Okay, let's dive straight into part one, the midnight disasters. This is our macro-level mystery, where we'll look at the specific events that forced investigators to dig way beneath the official explanations to find a hidden cause.
Think about March 1979 at 3 Mile Island, April 1986 at Chernobyl, March 1989 the Exxon Valdez. Now, these absolute catastrophes spanned three entirely different decades, right? And three totally different industries. But investigators found one terrifying thing in common. Every single one of these disasters happened in the dead of night, specifically between midnight and dawn. They were run by people whose bodies were quietly, desperately screaming at them to just go to sleep. You see, nobody was being careless or reckless on purpose. Rather, they were falling victim to something that is quietly reshaping the health of roughly 1 in 5 modern workers today.
Which brings us to Section 2, our ancient biological clock. We're zooming in from the macro disasters right down to the microbiology here. So, to understand exactly why those operators couldn't just, caffeinate their way out of danger, we need to meet the hidden culprit inside all of us. Forget the clock on your wall or your phone. Right above where your optic nerves cross sits this thing called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's a tiny cluster of just about 20,000 neurons, and its entire job is to track a 24-hour cycle using absolutely nothing but the light hitting your retina. For 300,000 years, this internal clock had a simple ironclad deal with the sun. Sunrise meant go, sunset meant stop. Every single hormone in your body, cortisol, melatonin, insulin, was built around that one single solar signal.
But in less than 150 years, we completely shattered that ancient deal. First, coal mines and textile mills realized the work couldn't stop, so they introduced the round-the-clock shift. Then, Edison's light bulb changed the game entirely. Continuous operation suddenly became cheap. Factories realized that while machines didn't need rest, humans did. And that realization paved the way for the modern 24-hour economy, a system that demands fragile human bodies perfectly match the relentless, non-stop pace of machines.
And that leads us to an incredibly dangerous biological low point, 3 a.m. This is the exact hour your core body temperature drops to its absolute lowest. Biologically speaking, your brain is demanding that you be unconscious, preferably drooling on a pillow, right? Yet, this is the exact same hour that hospitals, power plants, and container ports are demanding human beings show up and perform highly complex, literal life-or-death tasks. You can kind of see the collision course we're on here.
Moving into part 3, the shattering of sleep and the human cost of all this. Let's look at what actually happens to a person forced to live on that collision course.
Chronobiologist Till Roenneberg coined a truly fascinating term for this back in 2006, social jet lag. It describes the permanent gap between when our bodies naturally want to sleep and when society demands we be awake. I mean, think about that for a second. For modern shift workers, this gap isn't just an hour or two. It is measured in half a day. They are living in a permanent, brutal state of jet lag without ever actually crossing a single time zone.
I want to slow down for a moment and just let this quote really sink in. It's described as a permanent, low-grade civil war between the schedule on the wall and the clock in the brain. The fascinating and honestly somewhat tragic reality is that the body does not just smoothly adapt to a night shift. Even after years and years on a rotating schedule, the internal clock of most night shift workers never fully flips over. It stays partially anchored to the sun, forced into this constant, low-grade civil war. See, before electric light, it was a biological choice. Humans naturally slept in 2 phases, synchronized perfectly with the sun. We call that first and second sleep. But today, modern shift workers experience what we call shattered sleep. They clock out at 7 a.m., squint into the blinding morning commute, and try to sleep in artificial caves made of blackout curtains and white noise machines. It's rest imposed on the body, constantly interrupted by a noisy world that completely refuses to go dark. Okay, Section 4, the hidden health toll.
It's time to shift gears and look at the impartial, serious data regarding the actual physical, cellular cost of fighting the sun.
The data from October 2007 is incredibly sobering. The World Health Organization officially classified shift work that involves circadian disruption as a probable carcinogen. Let that sink in for a minute. It's in the exact same risk category as ultraviolet radiation. And the risk isn't coming from the stress of the job itself, it's from the disruption of that internal clock. By constantly fighting the sun, workers chronically suppress melatonin. And hey, melatonin doesn't just make you sleepy, it actually regulates cell division. So by suppressing it, you might be quietly disabling one of your body's natural safeguards against tumor cell growth.
And you know what? The cancer data was really only the beginning. A massive pair of Harvard studies followed over 140,000 nurses for 2 decades, and it's wild to look at how the risk scales. Women who worked rotating night shifts for 1 to 10 years carried a modest risk for type 2 diabetes. But push that past a decade, the excess risk jumps to about 40%. Past 2 decades, it approaches a staggering 60%. Researchers found this wasn't just about weight gain or diet. The body literally becomes metabolically confused, desperately trying to process sugar on a schedule that totally contradicts its baseline biological programming.
Which brings us to part 5, a war against time. Let's zoom back out to modern society to see how we define this ongoing systemic conflict today.
By the 2010s, experts officially stopped calling this a personal flaw or mere exhaustion or laziness. It is now formally classified in the International Classification of Sleep Disorders as shift work disorder. It's defined as chronic insomnia or excessive sleepiness tied directly to schedules misaligned with our natural clock. It is quite literally, by clinical definition, a disorder of time itself.
And the sheer scale of this whole thing is absolutely breathtaking. 1 in 5. Roughly 1 in 5 workers in industrialized economies right now work some form of non-standard shift. Think about it. Nurses, pilots, emergency responders, truck drivers. The entire infrastructure of modern life is basically running on the backs of people whose bodies are in a state of open biological rebellion against their schedules.
So, how are companies trying to manage all this? Well, there are a few modern adaptations out there. Things like strategically timed bright lights during shifts, prescribing total darkness post-shift, or even using forward-rotating schedules, mostly because human biology finds it slightly easier to accept a later bedtime than an earlier one. Now, these tactics, they definitely try to trick the internal clock into partial cooperation. But make no mistake here, none of these adaptations undo the fundamental biological conflict. We are asking the body to be somewhere else entirely, and we frankly never asked its permission first.
Which brings us to our final question, taking us right back to where we started with the midnight disasters of Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and the Exxon Valdez. They failed at the exact hour a 300,000-year-old signal inside the human brain said, "Stand down." But modern life demanded we keep going. So as you think about the millions of people out there tonight, in hospitals, cockpits, and warehouses, who are quietly arguing with a biological clock that was never, ever built to lose, I leave you with this. Can we ever truly win a war against time? Or is it only a matter of time before the clock wins? Thanks so much for exploring this with me today. Keep wondering and keep learning.